الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. Before I begin with our reflections, there was a moment in Sheikh Abdul Aziz's discourse and he made reference to the nafs as a wild beast. And as I was sitting there, as he was getting to mentioning the word wild beast, for a moment I was back in Africa. And I was thinking, Abdul Aziz, you don't realize that there's some of us that are from Africa, and by definition we are wild. Our environment dictates our behavior to a large degree. And in one day you could be at the Kruger National Park and find yourself admiring the lions. And if you get too close, you might just find their paws getting the better of you and fling you to another side of the park, and maybe at the bank of the river, and you're going to have to get across to the other side. You're going to have to walk over the back of the hippopotamus, and then catch a ride with a zebra to the cliff, and find yourself that the only way down is that you actually have to jump, and so you jump, and the cliff could be 20 meters up to the sea. Or to the lake, for that matter of fact. And so I found myself falling. I was jumping because I thought I might as well go all the way. And as I was jumping, I found myself halfway in the air, and Sheikh Abdul Aziz mentioned the word wild beast. So I was frozen there for a while. So maybe if I can just get my splash, if that's okay with you, complete this dive. And that is a typical definition of nafs. In its natural disposition. Its nature is to be frivolous. Its nature is to investigate, to inquire, and its curiosity. Its nature is to experience and learn from the experience the consequence of that. And sometimes the consequence could lead to be harmful, and at times could be useful. So I thought I'd just share that with you. It was amazing, the moment of synchronicity between his words and what was actually happening within me. So yeah, we're from Africa. And we represent the wild beasts from Africa. And I hope that in the next 2 days, what I'm going to share with you really will just reflect my own personal journey, and my wife, who's also with me here, who will also be sharing her journey with you. We are very fortunate that for the last 10 years we were able to spend time with our Sheikh Allah Hayri, who, by the way, he sends his salams to each and every one of you, and wishes you well over the weekend, and hope that you derive from this meeting not just the joy and the pleasure of embracing all these discourses and the hikmah that will come from it, but also the meeting of hearts, that you enjoy each other's company, and that you celebrate this gatheredness of celebrating life in essence, which is what the purpose of our existence is really all about. I'd also like to, before I begin, mention that I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep Sheikh Asif in his favor, and help him through his trials and tribulations, and keep him safe, his family, and the taqiyah. And we pray that we have the opportunity soon, inshallah, to be in his company again, and to Sheikh Abdul Qadir Al-Murabit from Scotland. We pray that Allah keep them all safe and overlook whatever we may have felt of concern, but we cannot weigh the effort and the successes that they've reaped over the years in terms of bringing this knowledge to our communities, and particularly to South Africa. And also I'd like to say that the last time I met with Sheikh Abdul Aziz, I was fortunate to meet Sheikh Nanawi, and I remember the occasion while we had our program in the St. Augustine Church next to the main mosque, for reasons you know why. We were fortunate to have had the opportunity to sit in the discourse of Sheikh Nanawi, and my thought that was running through my mind is this man mad to come into the belly of the beast and expect these people to receive his discourse with great optimism when their agenda is clearly different. But that was a great lesson. That a true Sufi, if I may say so, Sheikh Abdul Aziz, sees only the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every occasion that is brought before us, and that it is short-sightedness from our side when we get caught up in our own personal agendas, and that is to judge someone and think that they are not will not be open to receive and to engage. So may Allah Ta'ala protect us from our shortcomings and bring the best out of us in every situation, inshallah. My approach to this particular workshop will be slightly different to Sheikh Abdul Aziz and to Sheikh Muslim. I have distributed notes, and I have also brought one of Sheikh Fallala's works on the story of creation in the Quran, where I felt that much of what we will discuss over the next few hours, sessions, are beautifully explained in this book. This has partly been my journey also the last couple of months engaging with this book. And together with what we've discussed last night in terms of the definition, with what we've already heard this morning from Sheikh Muslim's discourse and from Sheikh Abdul Aziz, I felt that a very good foundation has been laid, and really it does complement each other and reflects the commonality in the objective here, which is really the exploration of oneself. And through that exploration, inshallah, we find ourselves at the doorstep of ma'rifatullah, knowing Allah. But I'd like to begin with a reflection that, inshallah, will be the basis of the next few days, and that is by the end of by the end of tomorrow and Sunday, inshallah, hopefully we will have deep understanding of what I'm about to read to you. This will be notes that I will be giving out tomorrow, to this evening, inshallah. It is an insight or hikam from Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, your remedy is within you. It's not in the notes, I've just shared this one, but this will be given to you tonight, inshallah. Your remedy is within you. Now I want you guys to reflect on it and hold on to this. And if you want to make a few notes on it, please do so. Your remedy is within you, but you do not sense it. But you do not sense it. Your sickness is from you, but you do not perceive it. You presume you are a small entity, but within you is enfolded the entire universe. You are indeed the evident book, by whose alphabet the hidden becomes manifest. Therefore, you have no need to look beyond yourself. What you seek is within you, if only you reflect. These are the words of Imam Ali regarding, inshallah, this journey we will be on over the next few days. Ibn Ata'Allah mentions in the Hikam that the success achieved in the end is by referring to Allah in the beginning. And in another one of the narratives in the Hikam, Ibn Ata'Allah also mentions that the seeker oscillates between hope and fear. There's this constant oscillation between hope and fear. Hope that we are open to witness the unfolding favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as it makes its way to us. And two, that we are able to embrace it. And three, that we are able to enjoy it. The favors of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what I think Sheikh Abdul Aziz was also pointing out to, the experience itself. Fear, caution. What you do with that favor of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Many times we ruin the good things in our lives and hold on to the things that brings more the misery and more disappointment in our lives. So the insight to these two narratives of Ibn Ata'Allah will inshallah help us break through the walls that have come up as a result of our own perception, and not that which is in fact truly reflecting from Quran and from the prophetic model and this beautiful creation that is around us and that we are in. So if we go to the first page of the set of notes, I want to begin the nature of the soul. I just want to quickly recap or just reinforce what we've already discussed over the last sessions. The verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that بَلِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى نَفْسِهِ بَصِيرًا وَلَوْ أَلْقَى مَعَاذِيرًا. Man is a clear witness against himself. Are you all there? Here. Man is a clear witness against himself, though he may offer an excuse. That's part of our journey. Part of our journey is to deny ourselves the gifts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. To deny ourselves from tapping into our greater potential and be comfortable with what we've limited ourselves to. So inshallah we hope we're going to explore beyond that. The second ayah which I have presented here is the ayat of Ya ayyuhan nafsul mutma'inna irji' ila rabbiki radiyatan mardiyah. O soul at rest and at peace, return to your Lord, well pleasing and well pleased. Come to me as a true worshipper and enter my paradise. So hold on to these two verses, inshallah. The nature of the soul, I'll go straight to the second point, where the soul, we mentioned, is a beam of light from its source, or the source of all perfection, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Is it part of this particular science of studying the soul? Two interesting points that I'd like to mention here is that while Adam alayhi salatu wasalam was still laying between clay and water, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took off his nur and said, "Be Muhammad." Then the miraculous birth or the conception of Nabi Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And that point, hold on to these two examples, because on the next page we will discuss this, of creation from nothing and creation from creation, to understand soul, ruh. The second point is that the nature of the soul is perfect and therefore not in need of cultivation. So as Shaykh Abdul Aziz said, that the soul and nafs is like from the same coin. The one part of it faces the brilliant nur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it is in that state of perpetual adoration and worshipfulness. The other side of the coin, or of the self, is that part which is the shadow of the soul, which is designed to engage and live in this world. And that is where the saying comes from, that we are in this world but not of this world. So at the time when the soul separates from the body decomposes and goes back to the earth. But is that the same for the soul? No. Soul moves on. It continues its journey through the barzakh and akhira. The fourth point we mentioned was that what does need cultivation is the way the soul manifests through self. Self is caught in time and space. Soul is free of time and space. Why? Because it is turned towards akhira, or it is turned towards its heavenly nature. And this is the agent this is the agent in us that is that subtle pulse that constantly reminds us of our nature. That we are light, we've always been light, we have the breath of Allah, and this is what makes us unique and divine. And when we are able to recognize that in each and every one of us, we realize that we are all sacred. We are all, by definition, we are all divine. And therefore life is sacred. And therefore life cannot be taken, except through certain such situations. The next point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks of the soul and self. It mostly uses one word, nafs, as Shaykh Abdul Aziz defined earlier in his discourse, as well as mentioned by Shaykh Muhammad, Muslim. The interface between soul and self. And the Quran uses the term nafs and soul. At times nafs will refer to soul, and at times soul will refer to nafs. But that's, inshallah, we will look at that further. And finally, Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, in the hikam which I recited earlier, in that hikam he mentions, you think you are some insignificant thing, but within you is unfolded the entire universe. So from a nafsi perspective, we are governed by limitation. The arm can only reach that far. The eye can only see so far. So we are caught in limitation from a nafsi perspective. From a ruhaniya perspective, there is infinity. There are no boundaries. And it is that part of us that never lose sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَإِنَمَا تُوَلُوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ. Wherever you turn, you see the face of Allah. The next page, we move on to knowledge of the soul. If there are any questions, make a note of it. And in between sessions, we can always continue engaging so that we can, inshallah, get through the content. Here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes reference of Himself in Surah An-Nur, Allahu Nurus Samawati wal Ard. That He is the light of the heavens and the earth. So, knowledge of soul and self is the foundation of spiritual progress and wisdom. Again, pointing to Shaykh Abdul Aziz's discourse. Where does this hikam originate from? Where does it stem from? Which part of our composition do we derive this hikam from? Second point, we all remember the engagement between Jibreel alayhi salatu wasalam and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which we made reference to last night. What is Sharia, what is Tariqah, and what is Haqiqah? To worship Allah, and ta'bud Allah ka'annaka tarahu, as if you see Him. Again, in that context, which part of our being is in a perpetual state of basira of its Lord? The soul aspect of us. Whereas the nafsi aspect in the traditions we were reciting from the diwans of Shaykh Muhammad ibn Habib last night, the nafsi aspect would say, this is true, but why is it that I cannot see Him? And the Shaykh would make reference, it is because of the veil. And what is the veil? The veil is the perceptions we hold that clouds our perspective of our relationship between ourselves and our Lord. And it is only when self, or the nafsi, and I agree with Shaykh Abdul Aziz there, the term ego, we need to relook at that. Because nafsi by definition is not a component within us that by definition is an evil thing. Nafsi by definition is that part of us that is the wild beast, or the curious child within us, that part of us that has been designed to engage this limited world, this creation out there, and to explore and to expand our understanding of it, only to discover that in it, before it, and in front of it is Allah, Allah, Allah. And that I am a perpetuation of that which I am witnessing before me. This is that shahada we are making reference to. This is what we are in fact proclaiming. That I am one with creation and beyond it. That I am not limited to it, but extend beyond it. I've come before it, I've traveled through it, and I will continue after it. I was a hidden treasure and wanted to be known. Very, very famous tradition. My wife was once asked, why does Allah make a reference in this particular tradition? He was, as in past tense, and not as in ever-present tense. I remember the two of us spent a few months coming up with all sorts of ideas, and inshallah she will expand on that in her discourse. Only to come to the realization is only until we realize of the ever-presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the innate nature which is this connectivity that we have and enjoy with our Rabb, our ignorance of that reality is what places this absolute truth in the past. So until we wake up and engage as what I see we enjoying here and what we've been part of for the last 10 years now, and our teachers have done for the last 30 years in this part of the world and in Africa and in America and so forth, only until we engage the meaning do we make sense of the form. If we are caught up only in the form, that by merit is limited. So you will have some enjoyment in it, but it will be limited. So you will have a good meal, but you will have to go to the tree on the furthest, the second tree, as you made mention. You will have to make that you'll have to fulfill that act. This is how this limited world, by definition, will continually remind you and me of its limitation, and it is not about getting comfortable in it. Take your provision and move on. Ruh, nafs, is an interspace and a bridge between this world, dunya, and akhira. Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ الَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. Again, as Shaykh Abdul Aziz says, he said so much in such a short time, mashallah. These two realities of dunya and akhirah, we cannot separate ourselves from it. Not even for a moment. To think that we will just enjoy a little bit of dunya and then inshallah we'll start thinking about these matters is a lie. Our biology is such by nature that it will bring you before these two truths and that it will have to be confronted. Your being as nafsi, dunya, your being as ruhaniya, as akhirah. This is why we turn to all kinds of chemicals trying to escape this world, because of this notion that goes beyond the limitation of this world, only to destroy the body in hope that we're going to find something better outside of our body. You know, the term we use, I had an out of the body experience. We talk a lot of things. So, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam reminds us, Man arafa nafsahu arafa Allah. There are some who say this is not true, that the Prophet had mentioned it. There are others who say he has, or there's others that say it is in the spirit of all his tradition that brings validity to this particular tradition of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the truth is, only when we, as Shaykh Abdul Aziz made an very interesting observation about the skies, about the furthest point of perception, and then drawing closer through all of it until you realize that what it is that you're seeking is within you. فَرُجِعِ الْبَصَرَ هَلْ تَرَى مِنْ فُطُورٍ. Remember we discussed this last night? Only to realize that the design out there is within and more. The design within goes beyond the design that you are caught in. This design which will bring about fatigue and hunger and the need for rest. This design that will bring about effect after the effect after we engage and we draw from it a result. And this result will bring about some sense of enjoyment or relief or comfort or successfulness, and contrary to that. So we will find ourselves constantly oscillating between these two complementary opposites. And this is what is referred to by Shaykh Fadlallah, makes reference to it as that in dunya there's duality, there's plurality. From a perspective of ruhaniya, there is only unity. So from within, looking out, we will see one of two things. From a ruhaniya perspective, we will see the one behind this marvel. From a nafsi perspective, we will see duality and plurality. We will see the complementary opposites. We will taste and explore and experience to get some sense of its makeup, and see how it resonates with us and how it works with us. Hence man and woman, hence heaven and hell, hence day and nights, and so forth and so forth and so forth. Life and death. So within the realm of the nafs, it is without any shadow of doubt, we will experience the duality of this world. We will experience its extreme opposites. And yet, what does the Quran make reference to? Find the middle of the extremes. Wusta, constantly. Find the middle between the two extremes. And I think that largely is what the works of some of the sheikhs of tasawwuf or ma'rifatullah has tried to achieve, is to bring us back to the point of moderation between these extremes. To be in this realm of ruhaniya perpetually, and to abandon your outer responsibility will bring about an imbalance. To be Nafsi, to the greater extent, will bring an imbalance in your spiritual sense. So it is about finding the balance between the two. I remember a couple of years ago, when Sheikh Fadlala gave a discourse at the University of Western Cape, one of the Buddhist students, there were several of them that were studying in the humanities department, and the question was asked, what is the difference between a Sufi and a Buddhist monk? And first thing is to think of, could be that, could be this, good. It's obvious, simple. That while we are inwardly focused, we do not neglect our outer responsibilities. Because that is it, what we will be held accountable for. So act responsibly, transact appropriately and correctly. And by definition, how we engage in the outer sense will give us a sense of just how we are attuned to our inner self, our state of our ruhi self. If we go to page 7, right, on this page of knowledge of self, the second last point I made, I said, as the essence, nature of the nafs is spiritual light.
What page is it? What does it say on the top?
Yeah, on top, knowledge of the self, the page that you're on. If you go to the second last point I made, as the essence, nature of the self is spiritual light. It yearns constantly for the perfect and boundless realm of non-time and no space. Ruh is perpetually basking in the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'd like us to quickly capture and just for a moment reflect on the idea, the concept of light. Now we're going to ask if there's somebody of you who would like to read. Can somebody read for me the first paragraph on page 7? The word of light in Arabic. Abdul Aziz, Abdul Hadi.
Light and darkness. The word for light in Arabic originates from the same root as that of fire. The Quran provides numerous references to different types and qualities of light. The most common reference is to physically discernible light in nature, such as the light of the moon and the effulgence of the sun. Intelligence and knowledge is another type of light. Then there is the metaphorical light of Allah, which brings life to creation and holds the universe. Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth.
And then further down, the Quran alludes to the numerous levels and spheres of life.
The Quran alludes to numerous levels and spheres of light within the range of human receptivity. Light is often used as a metaphor for what enables us to perceive and experience. We are invited to reflect upon and contemplate natural and mysterious phenomena, which appear to have different facets and qualities.
Further down, metaphorical light.
Metaphorical light and guidance often accompanies remembrance, awareness, and higher consciousness. A garden or paradise relates to the enjoyable state of contentment and happiness. Fire and hell can be experienced physically in nature, but metaphorically relates to forgetfulness, distraction, and the lack of enlightenment and realization of truth. Fire is considered the greatest affliction, for it destroys and disintegrates all material substances, whereas light opens up subtler and higher levels of experiences and understanding. Signs and metaphors of the Quran are described as sparks that produce the light of guidance out of the darkness of the lower self.
So, when we look at that nar and nur, in essence, it's the same, but can bring about two complete opposite results. Higher consciousness, when we are aware of its signs and the consequence of that. So don't touch fire, you're going to burn your finger. So we caution ourselves from doing so, or don't play with it in an environment like in South Africa, for example, during the summer, Cape Town, those beautiful mountains that we have. This year past, we've had the worst fires ever experienced in history, where we lost up to 75% of the plant and animal kingdom that resided amongst the Cape Town Table Mountain and Devil's Peak mountains, purely because of our negligence. Walking and smoking and dropping our cigarettes, or a glass, drinking a cool drink, dropping the bottle, and the sun rays hits through the glass and causes that fire. Negligence. Forgetfulness of the sensitivity of our environment, and if we are not attuned to its sensitivity, we could bring about its destruction. Its destruction, as well as denying us the continued benefit of its presence. So, higher consciousness is knowledge and caution of how to handle and how to engage. Lower consciousness, which refers again to the lower nafsi aspect within us, is that part of us where we are negligent, we are forgetful, we are inconsiderate, and by that we bring about destruction, we bring about imbalance within our lives, and our lives with nature for that matter, and our lives with others whom we are engaging with. It's important when we go through this particular reading again, when we make reference to the ayah, Allahu Nur Samawati wal Ard, we have this composition of both ruh, as in spirit, as well as nur, as light. Why? Because if Allah is Nur Samawati wal Ard, then it is evident within. As much as His breath or His breeze, this heavenly breeze that finds that we are, in fact, just the conduit through which the heavenly breeze finds its way through this earthly realm. وَاعْتَصِمُوا بِحَبْلِ اللَّهِ جَمِيعًا. This habl, this rope that we are talking about, us as beings hanging between the heavens and the earth with this divine light as this rope connecting us between the heavens and earth. And it's only when we come closer to the center of this reality we begin to interpret our relationship with everything else on the principle of sensitivity. And that is ruh. Ruh brings about that feeling of sensitivity. Be careful what you say to the other. You could just hurt that being. Be careful how you handle the flowers. You could just be bringing about an imbalance by how you're handling it. Be careful how you slaughter your animals. Before we even do that, how we nurture our animals for that purpose of sacrifice, so that it ensures our ongoingness in terms of what we draw from it for the body's nourishment. Suddenly, it is not a question of halal and haram. It's a question of sensitivity. Ruhaniya is subtle. It engages without you realizing it is engaging you. Nafsi is gross. When it engages, you know you are being engaged. Like when the young little girl, her mom calls and says, Fatima, bring mom some water. And out of her goodness and wanting to please her mom, she runs and she trips and she falls and she breaks the glass. From a Ruhaniya perspective, we would grab her and hold her and say, it's okay. Why? Because we see the meaning in her act. Her act was, she just wanted to please her mom. Or we could be like what we are doing in the world at the moment. We could be punishing the child because she slipped and dropped and broke the glass. So therefore she must be taught a lesson so that she's careful next time and never make the same mistake. You see how the nafsi aspect of us can justify its action? Isn't this what we're doing in the world at the moment? And in the name of Allah and His book and His prophetic model. As Sheikh Abdul Aziz said accurately, this does not require text to know the difference between that which is good, virtuous, righteous, meaningful, and its opposite. Because this is instinctive, it is intuitive, because it stems from one's ruh. And if we were to rely on it only, sufficient would it be. Why? Because we would be inseparable from our Rabb. At least we would not have to teach aqidah, because we would be witnessing His self-manifestation in every encounter we are engaged in daily. Let's go to page 27. Again, we continue with light. Can someone else read? And if you look at the book, you'll find that for every subtitle, at the end of the page below it are the Quranic verses that you can go and do your own reading on and further research and see how other scholars' interpretation and writings on it. Rihanna? Page 27.
Light of consciousness. Being alive, conscious, is described in the Quran as being at two levels with regards to human beings. One is physical and biological life, or consciousness, and the other level is to do with God consciousness or enlightenment. People who are living only at the biological level are described as those who are in darkness or who are veiled from truth, or who are simply following the egotistic plans and directions which will ultimately lead them to misery and solitude. They plan, plot, and do not have the reflectiveness and referencing as to where that would lead them.
Continue. Those who follow their path. Next paragraph.
Those who follow their faith and act appropriately have the basic qualifications to emerge from the levels of darkness of the soul into the light of the heart. It is this friendliness with truth and their faith and trust in God that will eventually enable them to emerge into awakened life or enlightenment.
Continue further. The Prophet's role.
The Prophet's role is described as a witnesser of truth, the giver of good news and the warner, the guide to enlightenment and a constant beacon of light, even if no one heeds the message. The Prophet's desire is to help all of creation attain God consciousness and to lead humanity from its base nature of darkness to light.
Two words that comes out that will help us further with light of consciousness and the various tiers within existence, inwardly and outwardly, and how it manifests, as we had read earlier. That light of consciousness that reflects ulul albab, those who have understanding of its relation with creation and the source of creation, and how we are engaging constantly. The word here is taqwa. Generally, the term taqwa is used and is referred to as fear Allah. Scholars of Ruhaniya makes reference to the term also as conscientious consciousness of Allah. That we act cautiously and conscientiously. That when we act from a state of wakefulness and not sleep or ghafla, as Sheikh Muslim made reference to earlier. So it requires of us from a nafsi aspect to take on the qualities of ruh. Because ruh is basking in the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As Sheikh Abdul Aziz made reference to, the names, the many names. Sheikh Muslim made mention this morning. The many names, the attributes of Allah, and the name Allah and the name He chose for Himself, which is Allah. Allah and all His Asma al-Husna. So only when we attune nafs to what ruh is already experiencing, will we begin to see things as they are and not as how we perceive things to be. Only then will we experience the true taste, dhawq of kirama, shukura, and so on and so on. These are not qualities we study and internalize. These are qualities that are already dwelling within ourselves that only wants to come out. It only wants to manifest itself. And its manifestation does not come in the heat of activity. It comes in our stillness, so that it overtakes nafs and it catches nafs and brings it in alignment with ruh. This is what tawheed means. When it is in that state of muttahida, it is one with its source and acts as Khalifatullah. Now it acts as an agent within this realm, which is shady, which is limited, which is nafsi. Let's move on then to the second page, the next page, which is referred to as Adamic self. That's really what it is now. We have some idea of before creation, When Adam was between clay and water, and the Ruh blown into him. I have that. We're moving fast, but I hope that when you do take your time and read through the notes and consult further with the shuyukh and those of amongst us who are specialists in these sciences, that we will be able to grasp it even more quicker. When I began the study, I studied in Madinah al-Munawwarah. When I came back home, my life was a mess. Because I grew up in a family that was Qadiri, my father was Qadiri. I found myself playing at the maqabir of the awliya of Cape Town. Sheikh Mahmoud, Tuang Nur al-Mubin, Sayyid Tuang Guru, Sheikh Yusuf. These were all these great friends of Allah whom our fathers took us on a Sunday morning while they were reciting, we were playing. We were playing at the feet of the dead. I grew up with it, and it helped me manage my life. The subtleties and the sensitivities was part of my nature until I went to Medina. When I came home, it was a defining moment in my life. When I engaged my father to such a degree that he raised a glass and he said, I will break this in your face. Because why I was saying that what you're doing is bid'ah and shirk, visiting karamats and all of these things. And only then I realized what had become of me. I had become hard inside. I couldn't smile any longer. And yet I grew up as a kid and hearing my father saying this over and over to so many of his friends. The one thing that what was common amongst all of them, they were jovial people. Constantly making laughter, playing with the kids. More so, kids always wanted to be around them. My kids didn't want to be around me, let alone other kids. I lost my family. I lost everything. When I met Shaykh Fadlala and I realized that this is this notion has always been there. My father had helped open this idea of Ruhaniya, but I blocked it, I closed it up when I went to Medina and went through that process of what's the right word? Brainwashing or whatever it is. And what you're seeing happening now in the Arab world is exactly that. That the people have finally got up and confronted this monster and says, enough. But yes, we're paying a great price for it. That's at one level. Then of course there are all the other levels. The truth is, we are digging up all this mess that we've created for ourselves. These trenches that have become entrenched and that have divided us and destroyed many of our homes. My father passed on and I moved out of Cape Town because I could not live there anymore. And I was an angry being. I couldn't teach anymore. I couldn't do it. Because I realized I was a lie. And I was part of a culture in South Africa where the businessman would pay your salary and you do as it is required of you. Sheikh Abdul Aziz, you're aware of that. Until I met Shaykh Fadlala. Now, let me be clear. It is not about meeting the man. It is a message from the man. This is what is important here. I sat in that Jummah and by God I say, a man jumps up from the back of the mosque and shouts that this Jummah is batil because this man is giving the khutbah in English. And a few men jumps up because they wanted to grab him and take him out of the mosque, and Shaykh Fadlala said, be calm, answered. If he's unhappy, there are many mosques, let him proceed, Bismillah, but dignifyingly. We went on. I realized, here's something here. I see my father in all of this. The footprint of my father. First meeting with Shaykh Fadlala, he says to me, I want you to take the next 3 Jumu'ahs and explain the fiqh position of Jumu'ah from the 4 schools of fiqh. Easy, no problem. But what he didn't tell me was that he was going to sit there in front of me in the masjid. And all the time I spoke, all he did was this. And every time he came out of the Jummah, he says, give your script. And he would tear it up in front of me. He says, you don't know what you're talking about. My wife she'll tell you. You don't know what you're talking about. Leave this business. Go and feed the cattle. You'll do better doing that than what. Haider Naqvi will tell you this. And I went home and I started hitting doors. Because I was comfortable with the monster within me, although it was this very monster that I wanted out of me. Why? Because I realized, where am I in this journey? Here I am again at the door in this confrontation that I had with my father. I am again at this door, and again I'm doing the same thing. Eventually what happened after that was, I lost it all. All that books and all that, I lost it by, like, my memory just went blank. I lost it all. And one day I get the call from Sheikh. He says, come. He says, you're ready now. So I go with him to Highwood. Shafat Lala, many of the ladies, Khadija then will tell you, you can't find a man who prays simpler than Shafat Lala. There's no fuss, it's pure, it's just pure ruh. I had the best praise in my life, just standing behind this man and melting away until I rediscovered myself. And one day we walked in the fields and he said to me, go and find yourself a job and free yourself from the shackles of these people who are controlling and who have hijacked our deen. This is on a microscopic level. What your family are going through is on a macroscopic level. But it's, in essence, it's the same. This nafsi aspect of ours that has become so boastful and arrogant that we've tailor-made our Islam so that it fits into our agenda, not us into its agenda. And my journey began. I already lost my kids, everything. And in that, I met my wife to be, who had lived and had gone through a struggle of her own, parallel to mine, only to become the best of friends today. Why I'm sharing this with you is because every time when I look at this term, Adamic self, it brings me before myself the monster that I am and that I've become, and boastful by pretending I know and being flamboyant with words and charming and all this crap that just brings about further disappointment and misery in my life. It was in the simplicity of living my deen I rediscovered myself. It was in the shortest of prayers at night that I had my greatest joys. It was in the recital of the Quran, verse by verse, little by little, that the meaning of it spoke to me. It was these kind of engagements, subtle engagements, that I rediscovered my true Adamic self. So inshallah, I think I'm going to end there. In the time from now till this evening, go through the Adamic self page, and then also read the reference pages that I put there below, 76 and 1743, and we will continue with that tonight inshallah. أقول قولي هذا فاستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات فاستغفروا إنه غفور رحيم.